Today, I'm just curious. We're joined by Chris Taylor, CEO and co founder of Fractional AI, a company helping some of the biggest names in private equity build AI that drives value. You'll hear how his team slashed costs by 84% for one portfolio company, how they assess AI readiness during due diligence, and why getting to production quickly is the key to successful adoption. Chris, welcome to Just Curious.
Thanks for having me.
Maybe we can start at the top. Who is Chris Taylor and what is Fractional AI?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Fractional AI. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been in tech now for about 13, 14 years. Met my current co-founders in my first tech job back on the early LiveRamp team in 2012, and beginning of last year when we were looking at this whole AI wave. All huge believers in the technology, quickly came to the thesis that one of the biggest winners of this whole moment is going to be non-AI companies that use this technology to improve their operations or improve their products and services for their clients, and that those companies need help adopting this technology and getting the most out of it. And so we started Fractional AI to help those companies win in this moment. We see an opportunity to build a $100 billion services business here in this market, and so we're growing fast and trying to help all these incumbent businesses with AI adoption.
You just noted you think some of the biggest AI winners won't be AI companies, but those who use it best. What led you to that thesis and how did it become the foundation for fractional AI?
Yeah. So when we were brainstorming different angles to take in this AI moment, we all have product backgrounds, and so we were brainstorming various product ideas for different startups we could start in this space. And when we went through that exercise, the pattern that kept emerging was, okay, this startup where you're going to do the X, but with AI. Actually, the first step to building that startup is to recreate the existing company in the space, the existing
Yeah.
non-AI space, and then do the automation. And actually, for that company, that incumbent to do this, they can build the same automation using the same access to OpenAI's APIs and others. And so actually they're much better positioned to win than the AI first startup that is coming after them. And that pattern just exists all over the place in the market. And so we very quickly were like, okay, well, if that's the case, if the incumbents are going to win, how do we lean into that direction rather than trying to go against the tide?
Yeah. Yeah. You've talked about AI native services. What does it mean in practice and how is it different from more traditional consulting or AI tooling?
Yeah. So AI native services, really what we specialize in here. The only thing we take on are projects that leverage generative AI. So we have deep expertise at using LLMs to automate processes and to build new product features for our clients. And that's the only thing we do as a company. So every one of these projects that we do, we're developing, we're kind of sharing knowledge across the team. There's a lot of institutional knowledge that we have at this point about how to do these projects, the order of operations to tackle them in, what's feasible and what isn't. And everyone on the team is a deep expert in this domain. And so I think while traditional consulting firms may offer similar services, I think you're not going to get that just deep AI DNA from every single person you interact with at a consulting firm that does a wide variety of different things. When you work with an AI native consulting firm, you're just going to get a different level of expertise and execution on these AI projects.
Yeah. And we're going to walk through a case study of your work, but what does a typical client or prospective client come to you with? They want to build something with AI. They have a problem they think could be solved with AI. What does the starting point typically look like? And what happens if, hey, and when do you figure out, generative AI is maybe not the right solution here?
Yeah, so I would say different companies are at different stages in adoption. Sometimes that does happen where somebody has an idea for, we've never been able to figure out how to do X thing, but we're wondering if AI can help us do that. And typically, if a idea has that shape to it, AI probably isn't the right tool to solve that problem. It's a much better tool to solve the problem of people are doing X thing today and they're banging their head against the wall doing it over and over again. Maybe I can automate it with AI. Is
Mm,
a much better shape to it. I'd say broadly speaking, the market has caught up to that. And so the majority of the conversations we have today are with CEOs and CTOs. And they typically have a pretty good idea now around, hey, these three areas of the company are areas where we need to use AI to become more efficient. Or or here is a product feature that we want to build that leverages Gen AI and we think could be game changing for our customers. And more often than not, today they are right in their thinking. That wasn't true even 6 months ago, but I think people are catching up fast. So what we do is we meet them where they are in that, and they're thinking, okay, here are the three things that you want to prioritize, and then we can go in and use our pattern matching from all the different projects that we've done, and very quickly eyeball a process end to end, or eyeball the kind of current state of the product and understand the new product feature, and quickly assess the feasibility, scope out what the ultimate implementation of this would be, and provide a timeline and a cost estimate for them. And that's the stuff that they seem to need the most help with, more so than the like, I don't even know where to start. We also see some companies that are that fit that pattern of we're not exactly sure where to start, and we can help them with their whole roadmap. But that seems to be less common today, and it seems to be more around, I know it's these three, but I don't know how to go from those three ideas to actual value hitting our financials, and bridging the gap between those three ideas and driving actual business impact is what we do.
gotcha. You often work with private equity owned companies. What's different culturally or operationally about helping those firms adopt AI versus public companies or perhaps startups?
Yeah. So I think there's a few things. One is that they're very impact driven. They care a lot about driving results. And that's a very helpful starting point for our conversations, because that's exactly the kind of mold that we're shaped in.
Yeah.
We're not trying to sell PowerPoint decks and big visions. We really want to go in and chase impact. And culturally, that is very aligned with the PE market, and that both at the firm level and at the portco level. The second I'd say is they tend to have good engineering teams at some of these companies, but they tend to lack the AI, like the deep AI knowledge. These are not. It's a very different DNA than VC backed startup kind of DNA, where if you work with a VC backed startup, everyone on that team has spent a lot of time with LLMs, really understanding this. They probably built
Yeah.
something on top of the APIs. That's not always the case with these PE owned businesses. And so oftentimes they're looking for that partner who has some of that experience that they don't have and can really accelerate their momentum on that front. And then I would say the difference between them and some of the larger enterprises, everyone at these PE owned businesses tends to take a lot of pride in and get in their work, and like really take ownership of things in a way that I have not seen as much with the enterprises.
Mm.
But the boots on the ground care a lot at these companies, and they're great partners to work with. And so we have a lot of fun working with their teams to because a lot of the work here is you have to get in with the subject matter experts who they understand a process better than anybody. Their insight in when you're building automations. And so they just tend to be really great partners to work with on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. With regards to partnership, what does the relationship look like between your organization and an existing engineering team? How do you work with them and leverage them? Also, perhaps make them better so that they can do things in the future they couldn't do in the past. What does that partnership look like?
Yeah. So there's two different people who are involved very heavily in kind of the day-to-day build out from the client. And it's the subject matter expert and an engineer. And then there's also some senior leadership and potentially some others. But at a minimum, to be successful here, we need the subject matter expert and we need an engineer. The engineer helps us navigate their systems and navigate the path to production. The subject matter expert is helping us with getting the data together, getting hand labeling the data when appropriate, doing a grading of our system output. One trick we like to use halfway through a project when the output of our system is starting to reach a very high performance bar is we take whatever their current system is, offshore team or some other system that they have in place, and you take that output, and then you take the new AI system output, and you blind the output, so that you not have just two columns, and you have a subject matter expert from the company grade the output from these two systems, and now you have all right, great, the AI system is outperforming, and it's kind of an objective measure assessed by the subject matter expert who knows this domain better than anybody. But it's really deep partnership with those two folks to build a great system and then to get it deployed for them. And then in terms of kind of how do we train up their team, that is something that we can adjust the level of how much are we intentionally trying to impart lessons on their team throughout and do that knowledge transfer depending on the client and what they want. So we have some clients that say, hey, I really want my team to come away from this with deep expertise about how to build with AI. And so we can go as far as taking an engineer from their side, embedding them on the project team, and having them work with us every day on this. And all of our best practices, they'll see up close, they'll do them themselves, and they'll get real experience doing it. They can bring that stuff back to the team. And then we have other clients that say, hey, I'm hiring you because I want to get more work done, and my team's already completely at capacity. So use the amount of their time that you need to get this in production, but otherwise leave my team alone. And we can do that well.
Got it. Are there any common misconceptions either private equity leaders or their portfolio company leaders have when they start a relationship with you?
Good question. I would say less about when they start the relationship with us. Sometimes in the early conversations that we have, more in the kind of scoping phase of these, I think there's not in every case, but sometimes there is they're very fast to reach for, okay, what is the one technology solution that I put in place here to do everything? So they're kind of looking for what is the infrastructure that I need? And then can I just get one piece of infrastructure in place that will tackle all of these use cases, or that will kind of make the work faster? And they're thinking tools first instead of thinking use case first. And I think that thinking works really well for individual productivity tools. So for things like get everybody at your company access to ChatGPT or some equivalent technology so that they can be individually more productive, great. Thinking tools first there makes sense. But for roadmap planning, for these bigger initiatives to automate big chunks of your operations or to build a new agentic product feature, the infrastructure component is important, but it's very hard to divorce that from a conversation about the actual use case, what the actual solution looks like. And the more you can think use case first and then infrastructure to support it, I think that tends to lead to better outcomes.
Yeah. Outside of sort of tool versus use case, what's an early mistake you see companies make when building their first AI workflow or workflow automation?
Yeah. So I would say one that comes to mind is the kind of let's do a bunch of POCs really quick. And so this pattern that I've seen, and sometimes this is like in an extreme, you'll see this with enterprises where they'll write out 500 ideas for AI builds, and then they, instead of like ranking them and really let's take this one or this one seriously and like really go build the production grade version of it, they say, okay, let's do a POC for all of these, see what we learn from that. And then the POCs, they don't really invest in doing the right way. They just kind of like, let's just do quick and dirty POC and learn something and get information on all 500 of these use cases. And so what they do for the POC is they just they like use a custom GPT, and it's one prompt. And they're like, okay, does this work? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. When it works, it's magic. It makes for a cool, flashy demo. When it doesn't work, you only have the control that you can get from one prompt into the system. And so then when the leadership teams are asking questions like, okay, great. So it works sometimes. How do we get it to be more reliable? How long is it going to take to put this in production? You don't have answers to any of those questions because you have tried to build a production grade system. You've just gone straight to quick and dirty, flashy demo POC land. And so I think the best practice I would say is really like when you're going to try to build one of these more involved automations, be intentional about it, invest in more than just a quick and dirty few day POC, build on the critical path to production. Try to, if you're worried that it's going to fail, you can take the harder parts of the build and you can do them first to de-risk this. But ultimately, you want to make sure that the work you're doing is on the path to production, and going to inform the decision making here around what is ultimately the timeline going to be. How long are we going to take to make this thing reliable? How reliable do we think we can get it? And that involves breaking up that one prompt into a bunch of prompts, a bunch of other steps, giving you more control over the system overall rather than trying to one shot something.
Yeah. And if I came to you with 500 ideas, like here are 500 things we think we could potentially do,
Yeah.
what's the right next step to get to the one or two, preferably one, opportunities that we can do a real POC with, where we can bring the domain expertise in and engineer in and focus on, so that we get the right sort of output to make a decision about how to scale? What do I do with those 500?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think the reality is most companies, if you just kind of ask the CTO or some other leader, look, you have a list of 500 ideas, but which ones do you actually care about? They're going to circle a handful of them. And so the exercise is, I would say the kind of order of operations exercise to go through is, if you don't have your list of, and 500 is, that's for some of the biggest companies in the world who
Yeah.
crazy operations, but for your average company, you're going to have somewhere in the 10 to 20 ballpark ideas. Get those ideas out on paper and make sure you have broad participation from your leadership team and potentially some other folks on the team around what those ideas are. And then it's a pretty simple exercise of which ones are actually needle movers here. And the leadership team's going to be able to do that exercise very fast. And then you need which ones are feasible. And if you don't have the expertise on the feasibility side of things in-house, that's where working with a partner like us, you can very quickly get to, this is feasible, this isn't. And once you've gone through that very quick exercise of, okay, which ones are high impact and which ones are feasible, you're going to get your priority rank list. And I would say the best thing you can do from that point is pick something that's going to go into production quickly, a smaller project that can also be phase one of a longer term build. So maybe, hey, we want to automate this big portion of our operations that's going to take us 2 years, but we can do phase one in 3 to 4 months. We can actually put phase one into production at that time, and it will immediately start driving value while we automate the other steps in the process. And so whatever version of that you pick, just trying to heat seek to getting something in production driving value soon is really valuable, because it becomes the success story you can shout to the org. It becomes an example that everyone can look to for what success looks like on these types of projects.
And then taking a step back and looking at the industry more broadly, what's the most meaningful shift happening in AI adoption for mid-market or enterprise companies?
Interesting question. The most meaningful shift, I think the shift in sophistication level at the companies that I'm seeing is dramatic. I would say, again, like 6 months ago, even folks were still pretty naive in their thinking about this, or at least many folks were. I'd say it's rare now when you encounter companies that are still really naive in their thinking around this. Most folks have enough experience using the tool themselves, ChatGPT and some or some equivalent in their own personal experience with that informs their understanding of this technology, and so generally, I would say companies are at that point where they know this is real now. They understand the technology a bit better. They know where to apply it. They still need the help of going, okay, I know where to apply it. Now I need to go from that idea to production. But I'd say that there's been a huge shift in the sophistication level of companies thinking around this. Last year, it was a lot of, yeah, I had this idea for this thing we've never done before. I think maybe AI can be the magical solution to this unsolvable problem. And now it's, hey, this team is bogged down with this task. This task feels like something AI can tackle. Can we automate that to free up this team to do such more, a lot of higher order work? And they're right. And then they just need help with some of the details.
Yeah. And speaking of a task that is potentially made better by AI, you were sharing with me example of some work you've done with an e-commerce client. I'd love to walk through that case study. So, and maybe we can just start at the beginning. What problem did they come to you with, and why was it so urgent?
Yeah. So this one is a PE owned e-commerce company. Actually, the company caught me. I was speaking at the CXO summit, and I came off the stage, and the CEO of this company like instantly cornered me. I was like, "Hey, I have this thing. I've been wanting to automate it for years. Sounds like you're the team to do it. Can we talk about it?" And he was really excited about it. The reason he was excited about it, so his business, there's one core piece of their back office operations here, which is matching from shopping lists back to their standard product taxonomy. And this process, he used to rely on BPO to do this for him. And there were a number of challenges that presented for the business. One, they just had a high degree of reliance on this offshore team. Like this offshore team had all this IP that kind of built up in their heads about how to do this process, and they were really reliant on them. And if that went away, they would have to scramble and figure something else out. Two, the turnaround time for processing these things was very high. So shopping list comes, they outsource it. It takes 24 plus hour turnaround time. User experience not great. And then the big one was cost. So this is a big line item for them. It was a significant portion of their company's annual expenses. And so they thought, okay, well, if we can build an AI system, maybe the AI system can be significantly cheaper. And so we tackled this project with them with kind of those goals in mind, cost being the main driver, but all these other ancillary benefits being possible. And ultimately, ended up in a spot where the product experience improved. The accuracy of the AI system was higher than the BPO accuracy. The turnaround time was basically 30 seconds instead of 24 plus hours. So the user experience got better, and the cost went down dramatically. I think the current system, the cost is almost all QA, and it's actually unnecessary. It's just they want to just overinvest in accuracy at this point. But the actual cost of the LLMs that are running is approaching zero at this point for this.
Wow. Can you walk us through how you prioritize which parts of this kind of process to automate first? Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. So the kind of order of operations of these projects is really important. So for this one, the task was you have this list, and then you want the output to be mapped to their standard product taxonomy. The steps involved in that automation, first you have go find the list. So there's a scraping exercise to be done. That scraping exercise is one that we excluded from phase one. We just said we're not going to tackle that. Scraping is actually a fairly hard task for LLMs today. It feels like it should be a solved problem, but it's harder than most people give it credit for. And so we just said we're going to exclude that. We're going to start at the point where you have the list, and that list can be in any form. It's a image, it's a PDF, it's some other format, it's a spreadsheet, and then we're going to go from that to mapped to standard product taxonomy and done accurately. So that was kind of phase one is just, or step one was like, all right, what do we exclude? What do we include? Once all right, this is the process we're automating end to end. So it's starting with that shopping list and then ending with the standard product taxonomy. The order of operations that you go about doing that automation matter a lot. Early in the project lifecycle, the approach we try to take is you want to very quickly spin up an end-to-end working system. And when I say working, I don't mean high accuracy working. I mean just you can give it an image of a list and it'll spit out something in their standard product taxonomy. And then you want to put in place measurement so that you can say how accurate is this system doing. And those, those are it's called evals. So you want evals in place for this project. And once you have those two things in place, now you can just go into iteration mode for the rest of the project. So you use your evals to tell you where is the system performing well, where is it performing poorly. You then put your development work towards the areas that the system is performing poorly, and you move your performance on these evals higher and higher until you get to the point where you're comfortable saying, hey, this system's performing really well. Let's put it in production. And so the kind of order that you go in there matters a lot. If you're week 12 of that project and you're trying to then figure out how to measure the performance of it, then you've done 11 weeks of work without knowing how well the system's performing, except going based on vibes. So it's important to tackle that in the right way.
Yeah. And then did you go back to the scraping after you had built out that kind of phase one and you knew that it was working as well as you thought it could? Do you go back to the scraping exercise and use a different technology, or what did you do?
Yeah, so for this one, the plan is actually to go back to that at the beginning of next year. So we finished phase one of this. Phase two is going to be scraping, and that's on the calendar for early next year.
Once this was deployed, what was the reaction inside the client? And once they began to see sort of how efficient this was and the cost savings started to roll in, what was the reaction?
Yeah, positive. I mean, they're really excited with the output for a lot of reasons here. If you go back to kind of what got them excited in the first place, like all of the different ways this can impact their business and the level of control they can now have over their own IP here, and really control their own destiny without relying on these expensive offshore teams, and have the cost savings. It's a win across the board for them.
Got it. And what did the sort of after state look like versus the before? You mentioned they were using a BPO. They had a bunch of people, and it was a huge line item on their P&L. Tell me a little bit about what the after state looked like relative to the before state.
Yeah. So the after state, I mean, one of the things that we strive for on a lot of these projects, like internal operation kind of projects, is you want, as much as possible, you want to build things that are task completers. So ChatGPT is a great tool for boosting my individual productivity as kind of a co-pilot for everything. But for something like this, you don't want a co-pilot assisting a human to tell it, hey, here's what I think the product taxonomy should be. You really, to get the most value out of it, you want it to just finish the task end to end. And so for this, for kind of change management purposes, you want to build a system that doesn't require extensive training, it doesn't require individual level change of behavior. You want it to just, the new default is, instead of that, that new list being routed to the offshore team, that new list goes through the new AI system and out comes the output. In this case, we also put an additional QA step at the end. So the output of the AI system here, it surfaces, here's the product taxonomy, or the list mapped to the standard product taxonomy. Also, here is a confidence score in that. And then you can use the confidence score to flag certain lists to QA. We also built on this one, so that QA team, can kind of go in and make changes where necessary. When the QA team does make changes, those changes get saved in a database. The system has access to that database. And because of that, it gets smarter over time automatically, which is kind of a cool add-on for this project.
And the cost save were what, percentage wise or dollar wise?
I believe it was 84% in year one. I think of that, of the remaining cost, 2/3 of it is QA. And that QA step is probably a 1-year thing, or that probably goes away in year two. And then of the remaining 1/3, we expect, as LLM costs decline, that probably goes down 90% on its own. So yeah, in essence, it's 84% cost reduction in year one, and going to 100, like approaching 100% in year 2, probably.
Yeah. What did you learn about change management in this engagement, especially when replacing a offshore vendor with internal AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what I said earlier, like the end-to-end task completion is important. It allows you to do this without a lengthy training process, without trying to change individual behaviors when you're just making a system that becomes the new default, that everything goes in and comes out the other side into this new system. The on the change management, working with the client perspective, I think working closely with their teams is important, and as this thing's being rolled out, being available to support them on a continued basis is something that we've done. So there have been times where their teams had questions about things, different things not performing quite as expected, and we're around and we can help them through those issues to make sure that it gets rolled out and really drives the impact that they're looking for.
You don't just support portfolio companies, you also work with PE firms during diligence. What kinds of AI related red or green flags you typically look for during these technical assessments?
Yeah. So in the diligence work that we're doing, we're basically trying to answer the question: what does AI mean for this target company over the next 5 to 10 years? And we're looking for two lenses: what is the disruption risk, and what is the opportunity? On the disruption risk, you're trying to look at it from a few different perspectives. What is the chance that ChatGPT disrupts this business on accident? What is the chance that an AI first startup actually can come in and take their lunch? And go down the list. What is the risk that one of their competitors launches AI features and that disrupts them? Or what are the chances that somebody adjacent to them in the market can now, or in their service, and upstream or downstream of them in some workflow? And so that's from a disruption perspective what we're trying to look at. And then from an opportunity perspective, we're looking for areas where that company's business has a significant bottleneck that is something you can automate with AI. They have a large, like the BPO cost center that you can automate with AI, and trying to find that in a business that otherwise has defensibility around it. So not everyone has that opportunity. This business is actually entrenched in this. They're kind of a one of one provider of this service in this area, and they can actually capture the value of that AI gain to accrue to them, and not just get priced in, or drive some price decrease for them. So those are the types of questions we try to answer. One way to give you an example of one of the opportunities, I think there are quite a few software companies that are PE owned, and many of them seem to have revenue bottlenecked by new client onboarding. So picture a software company that has like a 2-year onboarding cycle for a new client, their software, that otherwise has great defensibility and great other attributes, and they have a team of people that are going through these lengthy onboarding cycles of new clients, and they're completely stretched to the max trying to onboard these new clients. And so they have, client revenue is on this big delay, and they have this waiting list of clients that they can't onboard fast enough. And in those situations, sometimes you can actually use AI to shorten that onboarding cycle from 2 years to handful of months. And now you're able to take all those clients off the waiting list and process all of them with the same number of team members you have today, and unbottleneck your revenue. And so that's the shape of an opportunity that we can kind of come in and assess the feasibility of that, what's possible from an automation standpoint. And then in certain situations, we look to co-invest with these PE firms where we see a significant potential for AI to move the needle for the business, and an opportunity for us to uniquely come in and do a great job bringing that potential to life.
Great. As we come to a close, a few recommendation related questions. If a CEO or CTO is listening today and they're thinking, we need to start somewhere, what's the first 30-day move you'd recommend? And maybe this touches on what you spoke to around the 500 opportunity prioritization. But yeah, what's the first thing you'd recommend there?
Yeah, so this exact situation just happened to me a couple weeks ago, where got introduced to the CEO. CEO said, "Hey, we haven't been doing much with AI yet. The time is now for us to really hit the go button and prioritize this. Where do I start?" And the advice I had was, number one, make sure everyone at your company has access to ChatGPT or some equivalent technology. And you want everyone on the team to be able to reach for this technology, work, use it to be more productive, especially with all the advancements in AI coding. You want all of your engineers to have access to some state of the art system. And when you do this, get access to the state of the art systems. Don't just default to buying what's easy. If you go buy Microsoft Copilot or something that doesn't feel the same as ChatGPT, and if it's a materially worse experience for your employees, they're not going to reach for it as much. You really want to make sure you go through the process to get them the state of the art technology that they're going to actually enjoy using. So that's number one. That's table stakes. Most companies have already done that, but some companies haven't, and that's a very quick, like, make sure you do that tomorrow. And then the next thing I recommend is going through that roadmap exercise. So if you already have an AI roadmap, great. If you don't have one yet, make sure you do the work of get everyone in a room. What is everyone's ideas for AI projects? Write them all down, and then go through and rank them based on impact and feasibility. If you need help on the feasibility part, get somebody to help you, and then try to find that one project that you can actually drive meaningful impact for the business in a short amount of time as possible, and sprint to getting it into production. So don't do the 500 pilots. Pick the one and make sure that one happens and happens well, and get something working that everyone at your company can see as the example for success before you try to tackle the other 499 things.
Great. What's the profile of a great client of Fractional, and who should reach out to you?
Yeah, so I would say we're at this point largely focused on the private equity market. We work with some of the biggest PE firms in the world and many of their portfolio companies. So the folks that would reach out to me, typically it's private equity partners and CEOs and CTOs at portfolio companies of PE firms. For the portcos, it's every industry. We're working, basically every industry you can think of, we're working with it. The project work is very similar across all those industries, but we're industry agnostic. Typical company size is 1,000 employees plus. We do some work with some companies that are smaller, though, as long as they have very high impact projects.
Amazing. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.